Okay, good evening. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to open tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting for the second time. Just as a reminder, if you didn't get the hint from the announcement a minute ago, we are taping this. So you are on Zoom. So smile. And when there are people on the agenda who are doing presentations, we are asking that you come up here so that those people who are viewing the Zoom can see who is doing the presentations. So thank you. A note about we were in non-public session previous to this. And at this point, at the conclusion of tonight's non-public meeting, we have voted to unseal those minutes that are subject to the acquisition of land. And those will become public within 24 hours and will be on the town website. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the public hearing. Yes, excuse me. So we do need to take a public vote to seal those parts of the non-public minutes that will say sealed, and those are pursuant to personnel matters. So I'll make a motion to retain those as sealed items. Is there a second?
And also tonight's.
And tonight's proceedings, yes.
Second.
Roll call vote, Janet?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Nancy, yes. And so those parts of the minutes of the non-public session will remain sealed. Okay, thank you. So now we'll start the public hearing. Is someone going to speak on behalf of Emily? The acceptance of the grant from the State Department of Safety for police body worn and dashboard cameras. Thank you.
Okay, so the board may recall in February of this year, I had come to the board. There was a grant opportunity through the Department of State, the Department of Safety, rather, excuse me, for a grant for body worn and dashboard cameras. And it was a 50% match up to $50,000 of the cost for a program like this. So with the board's blessing to pursue this opportunity, I did so. I applied for the grant. And we were awarded the grant in the amount of $49,560. The total cost of the body worn cameras and dashboard cameras, because we currently have zero at all here in the town. We don't have any dashboard or any body cameras. So the total cost of the cameras is going to come to $107,414. And so we were awarded the almost maximum possible amount through that grant.
Okay, any questions from members of the board?
I move we accept the grant as proposed by the chief.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any discussion or question from the public? Peter?
Is there any money in this year's budget for the remaining $50,000+ for the rest of the purchase of these? $49,560 pays, a little less than half of what would project the cost.
Sure. So there's some options which I've given to Kim. There is $20,000 in the police capital equipment reserve fund. Some of the ARPA money that the town has is also an option to be used for that. aside from that, I didn't budget anything in this budget because when I created the budget, I didn't even know about this grant at the time. So I don't have anything budgeted for it per se, but there are some other opportunities, I think, throughout the budget. There are some ongoing costs as well for this program. We'll have to increase our internet speed because it'll be a cloud-based platform and portal where the information is going to be stored. So we'll have to increase our internet speed for better upload. There is some other work, some cabling that will need to be run in the police department and a switch through VC3, our computer company. So there are some other costs that will be borne by this. But I think body worn cameras and dashboard cameras are a great thing for a police department to have. And so I fully support body worn and dash cameras.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, then I will close the public hearing.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we'll go to appointments and start with, I am going to ask that we try to limit presentations and discussion to 20 minutes for each item. We have a pretty detailed, lengthy agenda, so if we could start with that. But Steve Allenby. Thank you. If you'd introduce yourselves, welcome. Yes.
Right there.
That's it.
Okay, we're live. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Steve Allenby. I've lived in town for over 12 years and I'm the president of Kearsarge Neighborhood Partners. And with me tonight is Andrew Winter, who's the executive director of Twin Pines Housing Trust. And we're here to talk to you about the Cricenti property and workforce housing. 2 weeks ago, an option was signed for Twin Pines to purchase the Cricenti property for development as workforce housing. And it was a long negotiation. And I want to thank the Cricenti family in particular for having the endurance to stick with us and for hanging in there. They clearly care about the town. So I'm going to talk briefly about how we got here, and Andrew is going to talk about where we're going. Because the option's a major milestone for us, we wanted to come before you before we had a lot of details for the project. And we know there's a risk to that, but we felt that it was important to talk to you early and to lay out kind of where this is going and what we think is happening. And we'd be happy to come back in a month or every other month or however you'd like to continue to inform you about the project. So how did we get here? Well, we all know there's a housing shortage. There's recent studies show that there's 10,000, they're estimating 10,000 units are going to be needed in the Upper Valley by 2030. And the Housing Commission had its own panel with employers that showed that they're having a great deal of difficulty finding employees from restaurants up to hospitals to colleges. So after the select board chose not to have the town buy the property last winter, a small group of us in New London, we're all New London residents, got together to see if possibly we might be able to figure out a way to get some workforce housing and to purchase the property. And shortly after we got together, we made the best decision of the whole process, and it was inviting Andrew and Twin Pines into the process. It was great. So together we've been evaluating the project from a financial standpoint. Twin Pines has been talking to the government about financial incentives for tax credits and, excuse me, and grants. And of course, the negotiations have been ongoing. As we went through the examination of cost, we became very, very concerned that that the project would be uneconomic. And 3 months ago, a foundation appeared that is willing to give us significant money, and it has a connection to New London. And with that, I think we're going to be able to move ahead. Now, when we began the project, we knew it'd be difficult. And it's been really a joy for, I think, all of us to see how we've identified the obstacles, overcome the obstacles, even some that seemed insurmountable. And I think a public-private partnership like this has a really good chance of succeeding. But I don't want to jinx it. And I don't want to be overly optimistic because, and I want to point out that Twin Pines has an option. They do not own the property and they won't purchase the property until we feel that we have a viable project. And we won't have a viable project until we clear a few other hurdles. And so this is where I turn it over to Andrew to talk about those hurdles and maybe provide some basics on the project.
Sure. Thank you very much. And again, Andrew Winter, Executive Director at Twin Pines Housing Trust. Delighted to be here with you all this evening. So a little bit about Twin Pines. We're located in White River Junction, Vermont. And we serve both sides of the river. We have properties currently from Enfield in New Hampshire into Lebanon and Hanover. Hanover, we have one of our largest projects, all the way to Hartford and to Woodstock, Vermont. We also own a mobile home park in South Royalton, Vermont. So we have a pretty well-defined geographic area that we serve. We previously looked at projects in New London over the years, but not been in a position to move forward on them. We're very excited and hope that this is the one to break that streak. We do all kinds of housing that qualify as affordable, and that means we're doing home ownership. We do senior housing that is age restricted, as well as workforce housing and subsidized housing for those who maybe have a history of homelessness. So we kind of do a little bit of everything, soup to nuts. What we're talking about here is what we would very clearly say is workforce housing. I think Steve touched on some of the conversations that he's had. I've had those conversations too with employers, the hospital, the college, who have struggled to attract, retain employees because of the lack of available housing. So with that in mind, we're excited to be working with the Cricenti family on the sale of the Cricenti farm and to develop a portion of that farm property, 7 acres that are zoned commercial for 60 units of workforce housing. The site's on public water and sewer, right off of Route 11, behind the Hannaford Shopping Center and across from the hospital. As you know, there are a few housing options in the area, so we think that this is really a great option for folks who might be working at the hospital, might be working at the college or elsewhere in the community to access housing. So we've, at this point, got an option in place and we'll be moving forward with permitting over the next several months. We anticipate going before the Planning Commission sometime in the Planning Board sometime in the fall. And the hope is that we can put together all of the various development team members, financing, get our permits in hand so that by the end of the year, allowing for construction sometime to begin in the mid 2023 with a completion sometime in mid 2024. So a little bit about what we're hoping to construct. So the project, we're looking at creating 60 units of workforce housing. Utilizing something called low-income housing tax credit program. This is a federal tax credit program that is administered in New Hampshire by the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority that is used to develop housing, workforce housing, and affordable housing all across the country. We're using something called the 4% credit program, low-income housing tax credit program, and that basically allows us to receive federal tax benefits that we in turn around and sell to investors. Those investors are often local banks, Bar Harbor, Mascoma Bank, Ledyard Bank. They're all buyers of those federal tax credits and all likely to be investors in a project in this location. And then the money that we garner from selling those tax credits, we use it to develop the housing. So at this point, we're looking to develop potentially as many as 60 units divided into 4 buildings. Each building would have 10 one-bedroom units and 5 2-bedroom units. So in total, between the 4 buildings, we're looking at 60 total units. We plan to have a separate community building with laundry facilities, community room, and an office. We plan to have one of the units for resident manager on site. And we're looking at plans to preserve the Cricenti farmstead at the entrance to the site. Who will live there? So this housing is, because of the federal tax credits, is designed to serve households at or below 60% of the area median income at the time of initial occupancy. Incomes can go up, and that's a good thing. We want people to improve their lives. So at time of initial occupancy, typically folks making $30,000, $40,000, all the way up to a family of 4 making $62,000 for some units. And then we also wanted to have some higher income units. So those units would be, able to serve an individual up to $58,650 and a family of 4 up to $83,000. So we think the way we're structuring this, that we're going to have a pretty good spread. People making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 being able to qualify for this housing and being able to afford it. We cap the rents that are charged so that it keeps it affordable for them in the long term. And again, if somebody moves in, they get a great new job and their income goes up, that's great. That's something that we like to see. That doesn't mean they have to move. So it's a great program. We think it works really well in meeting some of the basic needs that we're hearing from employers. Folks making 17, 20, 25 bucks an hour, this is going to be perfect for them because this is the kind of housing that they'll be able to afford and that will hopefully allow employers to attract employees to the town. So that's a little bit about the project, and I'm happy to take some questions at this point. We look forward to having lots of conversations in the coming months about this project.
Great, thank you. And certainly, that we have a housing commission that is very interested in working with you on this as well and supporting you. So very pleased to see this move forward. Any questions from Janet or Bill first?
So you won't be using the entire acreage for your project?
Not at this point. I mean, again, what we've done is we have an option for the whole site, actually 2 options. One for the first portion that we hope to develop next year. And then we have an option for the balance of the site. Not clear what we're going to do. We're really sort of focusing on trying to move forward with the first 60 units.
And you have an idea what you intend to use the farmhouse and the barn? You're going to keep that? You're not going to tear it down?
At least initially, keep that. I mean, again, one of the things, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we're looking at, we've got to do a little bit of historic research on the buildings. That's often a concern. And one possibility may be, whether portions of that might be included as a community building. I referenced some of that, the need for that. So we're not quite sure yet, but look forward to developing that plans and sharing those with you in the coming months.
Do you intend to keep any of the land for conservation or agriculture?
Not initially in the first project. I mean, the first project is the 7 acres. So this is the area immediately behind Hannaford's and behind the Cricenti homestead. And so that area comprising about 7 acres, by the time we do 60 units of housing in 4 buildings, and again, these are going to be 2-story buildings, walk up, pitched roof, very typical for the kind of construction that you see around here in terms of appearance. But once we do that, provide for parking, 2 spaces per unit. I think, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 2 spaces per unit. So we're at 120 parking spaces. That takes up, between all of that, it takes up a significant portion of the site. There may be some opportunities to do some community gardens, possibility of solar. These are things that we'll be exploring as we develop our plans more fully.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Bill?
I guess all I can say, most of the people in the audience know, I was the one who wanted to have the town get involved in this project. And I have to say, this is a much better solution than what I would have come up with. So thank you, Steve, and thank you, Andrew.
I'll open it up to some questions from the audience. We have a few minutes. Peter?
Are these units going to be owned by the people or rented?
So great question, because I probably didn't emphasize that. The tax credit program is a rental program, and that's, so this is rental housing, which we've heard from employers is the big need right now.
Okay, any other questions? Janet?
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you. Big time. Thank you.
Well, we're delighted to be here. And I will say to Steve and to others on the housing committee that we met with, who pushed us, it would not have been possible without, some folks really stepping up, stepping forward, generously supporting this project. So I thank them. And I do appreciate the interest and support that we've gotten from the employers as well, because they're desperate for places for employees, for sure.
Thanks for jinxing it, Janet.
Yeah, so I think we're going to end up being about 1,100-ish to about 1,300 for the one bed and about 13 to 15 for the two bed. That's still well below market. We just had a market study done, which showed that the two bedrooms in this area are, $2,000.
And that's utilities included.
And that's utilities included. So, but that's the preliminary numbers. We'll be working on that going forward as we're working through our budget numbers.
Adam?
I just wanted for the New London voters to acknowledge that this is a success of the density changing in the commercial zone this past November or past March. Before that, this project wouldn't be possible. So the fact that there's something coming along so soon after the zoning changing is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the reminder.
And we have been working, I've been talking with Peter Nichols. as
Yes,
we've gone along. so-
absolutely.
And he's been great to work with.
Great. Okay, hearing nothing else from the audience. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank
You're welcome. And
And we will look forward to having you come back and keeping us updated.
yeah, I will leave this for the members of the board. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Recreation Committee. I think it's Chris Lorio and Putnam.
I'll try. To talk to him.
Great. You got yours question. All right. Thank you for the time today. On behalf of the Rec Commission, whose most members are here, except for Jackie, and I'll be speaking for Jackie. Her flight was delayed, so she's unable to make it. We wanted to come to the Selectmen
And you are.
and I am Chris Lorio,
Thank you, Chris.
Vice Chair of the Rec Commission. So we wanted to bring back to the Selectmen a request to return to a full-time recreation director. As the Selectmen know, over the last year and a half, Putnam, who has been the part-time recreation director, has done a really great job of continuing rec. Back in the fall of 2020, after the former Rec Commission director left, we decided at that time to move to a part-time role. That Rec Commission decided to move to a part-time role. And in that time, Putnam, as I mentioned, has done a really good job of continuing some of the activities that we've had through COVID. Obviously, many of the activities that we had prior to COVID, we decided not to pursue, given safety concerns and other concerns. At that time, the budget that we used for the full-time rec director was put toward an activity fund, which Putnam then used to fund certain activities in town. For example, the outing club asked for some money for the Woodward Field for equipment and to fund the restoration of the baseball field. But really over the last year and a half, our experience with the part-time director, and Kim, if you want to advance the slide, a couple of slides. I won't bore you guys with the mission statement since you've already seen that. If you can go one more. Putnam's focus has really been on a few items over the last year, right? So given the time, and it's part-time, so 20 to 25 hours a week, Very limited time in order to handle everything that we think the rec commission or the rec director should be able to do for the town. So his primary focus obviously has been the waterfront, which is what he's doing right now. And then he's really had the capacity, and I'll let him speak or answer any questions you might have, for 1 or 2 seasonal events. So we've done, help out with trick or treat for Halloween, the ice rink in town, winter carnival, and Easter. Also, and with a part-time director, we know that that is a difficult role to continue to maintain and retain talent. And so, Putnam could decide that this isn't for him, and then we would have to bring someone else on board. And many of those activities that you see would probably fall off the table because we'd have to try and get someone back up to speed. Go to the next slide, Kim. So the thought, and it's a unanimous thought from the Rec Commission, that the part-time role is not really meeting the needs of the New London community, especially as we come out of COVID. There is a really high demand for activities for folks of all ages and abilities. If we go back to the rec department mission statement, it's not just about sporting events and athletic events. It's about meeting the recreation and leisure needs for everyone in the community. And we feel like there's been really stagnant growth with that, as well as a higher demand and an increasing community population, right? Also, again, with the limited time that Putnam has, there's not been a lot of time to focus on providing events and activities for that full range of our community. A limited time and availability to partner with lots of community groups that we have. There's been a lack of time to plan and execute multiple year-round events and programs. So think about things like Strawberry Fest or other activities that we've done in the past that we've not been able to do. And when we think about long-term planning and also evaluation of programs and what the community wants, there's not a ton of time in order to put those surveys together, get the data, come back to you guys with thoughts, or come back to the Rec Commission and work on what those things could be. So that all leads us to the next slide, which is, you may have a question around budget impact and what this would mean. As again, you know this as well as I, the activity fund was essentially what a full-time director salary would be. So that was moved to be a activity fund from a director salary. So what we're proposing is to actually take that fund and use that fund again for a full-time director. We have used a little bit of the current 2023 budget to fund the Rotary Club activity, but that's a very small amount, about $4,000. So right now, plus or minus a few dollars, we have about $63,500 in that activity fund for this year. Again, we would ask for that fund to be used to fund a full-time role. And then if that was approved, actually the budget impact this year, because if you divide that 69,000 by 12, it's about $5,800 a month. We actually would be budget positive for the year, at a minimum neutral. If it was a budget concern, not that we're proposing this, but if the selectmen said, hey, you know what, like, we know that there's some concerns around inflation, we would be willing to discuss pushing off the hiring of a full-time person a couple months. But the idea is to really post that role, if you approve, and get talent like Putnam or other folks who may apply for that full-time role. The other parts of the presentation, there's, if you want to, the next slide, again, I don't know if you've looked at the slides beforehand. Cheryl and Dave LaPrade wrote a really nice testimonial about the needs for a full-time director and what it would mean for the community. We've had other folks who have provided testimony, and then we also provided some examples of programs that we have talked about as a rec commission with Putnam that we would like to either reinstitute or accelerate moving into 2023, 2024, things that we can do for the community with a full-time person that we're not able to do with a part-time person. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I'm Putnam Kidder, and I was hired last summer to do the beaches and be the beach director, and then stayed on as the part-time recreation director. I've been doing that since last September. So I think the picture with the clock is a really good description of where things are at with part-time. And the recreation director position is a full-time position to be able to meet the needs of the community. And I feel like the part-time really kind of handcuffs the person doing that. And it doesn't serve our community as well as it should. So I think the full-time is certainly going to benefit the community, the residents of the town, the quality of the programs we can offer, the organization of the programs, the promotion of the programs, and the overall growth of the recreation department. Because I feel like it's really important. As Chris mentioned, the town is growing. People are coming in to the area from more urban areas, and they come in from places that have really vibrant, a lot of things happening through the recreation department. And they come in and they say, well, what's going on here? So I think that's really important to think about that. And also with the full time, we really are able to not just focus on these small number of events. We're able to broaden the ability to reach multi-generational populations, and then also continue to grow and assess what the community wants and needs, and to grow with that. And I feel like part-time is going to be stagnant and shrinking, and full-time offers the opportunity for it really to be a vibrant, growing community option, and a benefit to the residents, and get more and more people to kind of roll the ball in the other direction. COVID certainly hasn't helped, but we want to come out of that bigger and stronger, and more community focused, and just a better, vibrant program department as a whole.
Questions?
Go ahead. I have one as well. What are you then proposing as the actual salary?
So I think we would try and, sorry, I think we were talking. We would try and start back at the 69,000 where the activity fund was. I think it would depend on the person that we hired. So I don't want to cement what that salary would be, but that would be the starting point, or even a little bit lower dependent upon that person, right? So there probably would be a range. We would work with Kim, look at historical salaries for folks that come in.
Yeah, we would look at the range, whatever the experience the person came with. The activity fund plus the recreation director salary, those two amounts together would equal the amount needed for salary, benefits, retirement, and all the rest of it. So.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
So Chris, you were here a few months ago and Putnam was with you, talking about the issue of the waterfront wages this year. Now Lynn is prepared for us and shows us where you are up to date. And it looks to me like you're going to come in about, Lynn, I'm going to ask you to verify about on budget, and the higher numbers that you talked about earlier look like they're not going to happen. Is that accurate? We've still got
We still have one more pay period.
$19,000 left and only what, 1 or 2 payrolls?
Right. So he'll have a little bit, and he'll still need a couple of weeks in June of 2023 to start. So he'll be close.
Yeah, but
It'll be very close.
not the numbers as I recall in when you were here before were significantly higher.
Yes, and that was kind of a worst case scenario, thinking about having, and we have had a few opportunities to kind of trim things here and there, and still offer a very great program. And I know there are a lot of places in the area and in the state and in the region that have been struggling for lifeguards and beach staff of any variety. So we were able to offer a good program, and I think we're going to be about where we need to be. It's not as bad as it looked before.
And I must say that the morning that I was at the training down at Buckland Beach, I was impressed with the commitment of the staff that you had there. That was excellent. So we're talking about budget neutral vis-a-vis the activity fund. I'm trying to make sure, because when we talked before, we also wanted you to be aware that we didn't want you to run over the total budget because of the beach. It looks to me, and I'm going to sort of try to put words in your mouth, like you can still keep within the total $100 and almost $93,000 for the year.
Yeah, I think
even with this proposal.
Even with this proposal, because again, if we think about, if we walked away and you said today that, yes, this is what we want to do, by the time we do want to post the role, and Putnam knows this, that we intend to post the role and actively recruit for that. Putnam's also going to likely apply for that role, but that would probably take a couple of months. So if you look at that, and we don't expect to use any of that activity fund in the meantime. So if you look to potentially even hire someone, probably likely at the earliest would be October-ish, you're already saving another $10,000, $12,000 for those 2 months.
Yeah,
And that could push out even more. So if we did have a budget issue, we could always come back to you and say, if we needed to save another $6,000, $10,000, we could push that off another month or two to make sure that we're, trying to stay as close to budget as possible.
no, I think because when you were here earlier, I
Yeah.
was a bit of a hawk on this issue, and
It's all right.
it sounds like
all of our
you're
dollars.
okay, and
Yeah.
it's on the recording now.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yes, it is.
I'm okay.
Okay. Any questions from the audience or comments? Yes, Peter, wait for the microphone and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. I'm Peter Ruth. I live in New London at 42 Westside Drive. I just have one comment, and that is that I have asked both Kim and Putnam within the last month about the sailing program, because New London had a great sailing program for the kids to learn how to sail, which was discontinued at the beginning of COVID. And I asked about it for next year. And both the answers I got were very iffy. And I would just like to suggest that it might be possible to combine a sailing professor or a sailing teacher and include the sailing program with a new director's job and make that a requirement towards whatever person was selected. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
Hello, I'm Jerry Coogan. I was a member of the Recreation Commission back in 00 and also in the 10s for about 12 years. I served as chair. I had the opportunity to work with Bob Andrews, Chad Denning, and I thought both of those people did an excellent job. They all had individual talents that they brought to the table. Bob was an ambassador to the community. Chad was an excellent role model for young people and created all kinds of events. I had the opportunity to work with Scott on a couple of projects. He brought a new dimension in terms of activities. I believe the director position of recreation adds a lot of value to the community. It provides a sense of community and brings people together. I remember going down to Boston to see the Red Sox, and that was a lot of fun. And this day, people went there 10 years ago. So, oh, I like the Red Sox bus trip and stuff like that. There's all kinds of things the recreation department can do. And I thought it was a step backwards when we went from full-time to part-time. So I commend the commission and the board for taking this step, and hopefully we'll end up with a full-time recreation director. Thank you.
Yes, Colin.
Thank you. Colin Beasley. Do your analytics include funding for the programs?
So we would continue to fund the programs. Like in the past, Colin, what we've done is we've still worked with other community partners to help fund some of those programs like Strawberry Fest. We do have, and we would need to talk about this, but we still have an activity, a revolving fund that we've used to help fund activities that still has dollars in it. That would also help at certain times of the year to fund those.
So in effect, the programs are funded outside the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think to that point that certainly the full-time role would involve a lot of community collaboration and working together to try to promote other organizations or see how we could work together to do that. So I think that's another part that part-time, you really don't get that ability to spend time networking and working with other community partners to offer recreational opportunities.
Janet Haynes, Highland Ridge. I just want to make sure that I'm grounded on this question. Do we charge people from other towns to attend what we provide?
So we had, due to COVID, a number of programs we've offered that take in money have been significantly limited. So we offered swim lessons this summer, which was a return after COVID. So we do collected, I think it was $80 for residents and $90 for out of town folks. So yeah, we do want, that's part of the fund, is that the ones that we do charge for go into a separate fund, separate from the budget. So that's kind of its own separate thing.
I just wanted to make sure that those attending that were non-resident contributed to our fund. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll accept a motion on behalf of the request from the Recreation Commission.
I move that we approve the request of the Recreation Commission to hire a full-time director.
And I'll second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have your work cut out for you? Okay, next we have, is it Art Scutro? Are you heading up here? Thank you. Talk about Westside Drive and
Just push the buttons for you. That way you don't have to. Need one. Lorio.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Art Scutro from Westside Drive, New London. I'm one of 9 residents from our area here tonight to express our comments and express enhanced concerns about the safety issues where we live on Westside Drive. The presentation I sent to you earlier, what I sent to you, I hopefully provided enough time for you to review it. It includes key points, timeline, and sections that report our enhanced safety concerns due to the recent 275-foot truck skid marks on Route 11. Highlight our request for speed zone changes in just yards, not miles, at a minimal cost, and indicate who loses: travelers, 5 seconds, and who benefits: your taxpayers. Before you begin, it's important to know why we're here tonight. Last week, our town administrator was told by DOT that an additional study was needed to reduce the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit on Route 11, which we requested last October. A traffic study conducted by the Regional Planning Commission in June did an excellent job in recording 58,731 vehicle speed on the area from June 16th to July 24th. It reports their medium speed of 43 miles per hour with the 80% at 50. The details on June 16th, for example, indicate 130 vehicles traveled over 50 miles an hour in 12 hours, one going 91 at 2:15 in the afternoon, the other 74 at 11 a.m. Nowhere in the study, however, does it indicate the extenuating circumstances that we, your New London taxpayers on Westside Drive and Snow Lane, face daily. Circumstances are similar to those reported to you by the Buker Road residents in July. A runway slope, 6% for us, poor sight line. Cars and trucks going 50 miles per hour, we can only see from 300 feet on one side, 500 on the other. Limited reaction time, just seconds for our drivers, 52% of whom are over 65. An additional factor, we have turning. The recommended safe turning speed of 15 miles an hour is very difficult given the hillside slope, dip in the road, and 50-mile-an-hour cars tailgating. The second traffic study requested by DOT will continue to measure the vehicular traffic speed, but will not include the 4 extenuating circumstances. Why do I say that? Because DOT has, in writing, indicated in 2017 and in 2021 that the speed limit setting criteria is 85% of the measured speed in those studies. The new study will be costly for the taxpayers, will take weeks to conduct and process and evaluate, needlessly putting off a decision needed for the safety of your taxpayers. I believe Albert Einstein famously is quoted as saying, insanity is doing the same thing. Right, Bill, over and over and expecting different results. I'm going to try and proceed, Madam Chair, with the presentation that you have in front of you, realizing that I thought that all the slides were going to be put up, but they're not. So I'll have to wing it a little bit.
That's okay.
The first
We have
slide
20
that's up is an aerial view of our neighborhood. And our 15 single-family homes with 37 residents pay you $300,000 in taxes a year. Our 31 drivers, as I said, were 2% are over 65 and 20% are over 80. The picture shows you at the lower right, the curve where it says Newport Road, if you can read it from a distance, which is the extent of this 300-foot sight line going toward I-89 that we have. In the presentation I sent to you, I identified this entryway in this 50-mile-an-hour zone as a speed trap. Our residents are concerned with two things: being rear-ended by the 50-mile-an-hour vehicles going east and west, and being broadsided or T-boned when they're trying to enter or leave. Reaction time is 4 seconds under ideal conditions, meaning no fog, snow, rain, ice, roadside weed overgrowth. The lack of a turnoff lane is a significant detriment to many of our citizens. One other thing, mentioning the age of the people, we all know that brain reaction time peaks at 24 years old. There's a chart I have, you'll see later, that shows that at 24, it's about a half a second. When we get up to our age, Bill, 1.8 seconds.
Art, please.
You're younger than I am, I know. My presentation to you indicated a timeline that started in 2017 with requests made exactly 5 years and 2 days from today to the DOT, requesting remedies to the, quote, very dangerous and unsafe turn conditions at our intersection. The response from the DOT in December that year indicated that after they looked at some data, it would more likely be moving the 35-mile-an-hour zone to 50 all the way to the ramp at I-89. That's in writing. In 2021, a few of us last August started to meet with the town, expressing our concerns and asking for warning signs and reductions. There was a response by the DOT at the time of the town that will look at the request, but we're going to need a traffic study. In October, we, the residents, sent an email directly to the DOT, reiterating our concerns and asking them to create a 35-mile-an-hour zone at Westside Drive. The response came quickly. He said he'd have his people look at it, and we need engineering and traffic study, as we know. No response was received for months. And finally, our state senator was contacted by one of our residents, and she called and talked to DOT, after which almost immediately the warning signs went up. We conducted the traffic study, or RPC did it for us in June of this year. Results were sent to DOT. And just last week, the town was notified that DOT thought there could be a case for reducing the speed 5 miles an hour to 45, but another study is needed. So we're here tonight to show our concerns. If you give us the next slide, please, Kim. 2 weeks ago, these skid marks from a semi-tractor trailer appeared at the entry to Westside Drive. They extend, I measured it with my pace, 275 feet. Chief Cobb said it could be a little bit shorter because I don't have long steps anymore. In any case, from Westside Drive, these extend 125 by my measurement one way and 125 the other. You can see the tractor trailer coming up the hill there. If your eyes are that good. The next slide, I tried to show where these skid marks would be, but Kim says we can't see it from your distance. So we'll just, I'll just tell you what's at the bottom of the page, if you can read that, they appeared on or about the 3rd. We don't know when exactly. And I asked Chief Cobb if there was a report of an accident or anybody reported in something, and we know of nothing. We don't know of anybody who was hurt. We think that perhaps wildlife was running across and caused the truck to apply the brakes very hard. Using Google Sites, we were able to calculate that at that distance, the truck or vehicle would have to be going 66 miles per hour if it loaded and 57% if it were unloaded. That would mean reaction time to anybody who was trying to come out of Westside at the time would have been 1.29 seconds for a loaded truck. In the presentation I sent you, I've got charts backing up the stopping distance data, which you've been able to read, which others will know is pretty accurate. Next, I show some speed facts showing from 25 miles an hour to 65 miles an hour, the number of feet per second it takes to go that distance, indicating that the time it would take to go the 125 feet that it would be from where the truck tried to stop and where it would cause an impact at Westside Drive. The 129 is for 1.29 seconds is for the 66 mile an hour speed limit. Going all the way up on that chart to 35 miles an hour, the reaction time would be 2:45, a significant 1.2 second difference. DOT was thinking that 45 miles an hour would be enough, but on that chart that you have in front of you, you'll see that that would only provide a 0.6% second difference, meaning half the time that would be if we went to 35. 45 is clearly inadequate, won't do the job. The next slide, I hope you have, if you were able to put it up, is a graph that some of us senior people don't like, but it's true. This shows the decline in brain reaction time from age 20 to age 100. The right-hand side of this scatter chart shows how many people there are that would have such a slow reaction time if this truck appeared. And it, in my view, for those, you just go to the top of the chart there, it would be zero for many of them. They wouldn't be able to see anything. The next part of the presentation I sent to the select board includes a chart that shows the 50 mile an hour reduction in red to 35 mile an hour in green would require moving just 3 existing signs and installing 1 new sign 300 yards to enable us to have a 35 mile an hour speed zone. I went to Rockies and found out that I could buy an 8-foot signpost and a speed sign for $32, including nuts and bolts. Half a day to move the signs, maybe $250. The options: a flashing yellow light that requires power, a flashing entrance ahead sign, or constructing turning lanes. What would they cost versus a one-time cost of $250 to move a few signs? Who loses, who benefits? The next chart I showed you shows that the difference in travel time for 300 yards from 35 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour is a mere 5.34 seconds. That's not a long time for somebody to slow down so that we can enter and turn safely into our roadway. Clearly, I don't consider 5 seconds losing, but somebody may say it is. It's lost time to me, so whatever. But the benefit is to our residents is priceless: safety and life. The last slides I had in the appendix, Kim was able to load and show the uphill view toward I-89. If you can see it, you'll see that the roadway actually shortens as it nears Westside Drive. So there's very little shoulder space as you approach Westside from I-89. The next slide shows the view the other way down the hill. There's a car you can just about make out that just came over the rise. You cannot see any car until it hits that rise, and that's the 500-foot point. Cars coming up from Otter Pond are not high enough to be visible until they crest that hill. The last two slides show the dip in the roadway as you approach Westside coming from I-89 in two shots, one way and the other. We hope you can lend support for our effort. I think my time, I clocked it before I got here, was about 16 minutes. And hopefully that leaves time of some minutes for my neighbors who I know want to express their concerns, and some vignettes about what happens to them when they drive in and out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Art. And as you know, the board is sympathetic certainly to Westside Drive's issue with traffic, as well as other areas in town, when we are doing our best to take them seriously. The issue, as you know, with this particular site is that we do not have authority over Route 11, but certainly will continue to, I believe, support your efforts. And I'd like to hear more at some point about yet another study that DOT is proposing. Who would do that other than RPC?
We can do some speed data, but this time we had the RPC do it because Adam, who used to work for the RPC,
Oh, he's gone.
has a connection. So we were able to get the equipment out there, and we thought since the DOT wants some additional sections done, that we should do it with the
I see.
same equipment to keep it all
Consistent.
sort of consistent. So Adam has a call into the RPC to see if we can get that set up. They do have federally required speed studies that they need to do. So getting their equipment, they kind of snuck us in to get the data as fast as they could. So we are working on getting those two other sections. But Art's right. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time, I
Yeah.
think.
Yes. Bill's coming.
Thanks. Tom Flynn, I live on Snow Lane off West Side. This has been going on for 5 years. And 5 years ago, the DOT had the nerve to say, oh, we'll increase the speed limit, go away. And they have been stonewalling us. They have been not returning phone calls, not returning emails. They think they can rope-a-dope the residents, the taxpayers of the area until we go away. We're not going to go away. And for the cost of moving two signs, can you calculate what the legal liability is going to be when somebody gets maimed or somebody gets killed because nothing was done? This is disgraceful. You know, I never realized when we started off with this thing, we wanted to move two traffic signs. And suddenly I'm involved in planning the Normandy invasion. Government should work better than this. And the DOT has been unresponsive. They have not been helpful, and they want us to go away, but we are not going away. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
So it is an election year, and the DOT do work for the governor of the state. I would suggest that perhaps in addition to the senator, you may want to take your argument up a notch and invite him out.
We have considered this. I can assure you.
I would go forward with it.
Yeah.
It is an election year.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Brenda Montagna, 70 Westside Drive. Thanks to Art and Tom for this presentation. There's another element that I just wanted to speak to, and that's not so much the reaction time, because I'm a little bit lower on the scatter plot than my neighbors. Wink, wink. but I wanted to bring up the point that we feel harassed, and I appreciate your support in asking us to, go vote in the elections, and we all do, but we actually feel harassed. And my young children who are also driving age, who have said to me, Mom, and I can't repeat this on camera or video, but I've received obscenities, when I'm trying to turn into Westside Drive, people have given me the finger, they have yelled at me. And these are young people who are, you know, very in tune to this. So they're used to hearing this all the time, and it even made them very nervous. So there's the safety aspect, there's the human factor, there's the harassment that's been going on for years. So anything you can do to help us move this forward, even outside of the election, I think would save lives. And that's the point we're trying to make.
Thank you. Okay. Colin?
Colin Beasley, would there be any value in the selectmen writing a letter to the DOT, to the governor, to whomever? To put your names on it to help the community?
Yeah, DOT is well aware. We've been working with them on it. So and DOT will see this video tomorrow. He has already asked me if we are recording it. So he is aware of it. We haven't written a letter to the governor. I'm not sure if Senator Ward contacted the governor or not, but she's aware of it as well.
I just think having it in writing from the leadership of the town would be worthwhile.
Thank you, Colin. We agree.
I'm certainly willing to do that. I don't know where my colleagues are.
Sure.
Okay.
You know, if we had control of that road, we would certainly make
Have
sure that
moved.
the speed limit was reduced.
Right.
But we don't. And I think it would be really impactful if you checked out when the Department of Transportation is having a meeting and you all showed up there. I think they would take notice of the fact that 20 people or 30 people showed up at one of their meetings and gave that report to them. You know, it's one thing to say it to us, but we really, even though we can write a letter, that's not going to necessarily move them along. But if you all came and demanded that they do something about the speed limit, I think they might listen.
I agree. I think that's the right thing to do. And I think it should go to the governor with a CC to the commissioner of the Department of Transportation. I also, when I mentioned before this an election year, I wasn't just talking about voting. I was talking about speaking with the governor specifically as he does his road trips about this matter.
You know, it's kind of sad in a way. I would say about 2 years ago, maybe 3, they were paving Route 11 going towards Sunapee. They had an opportunity then
to change the signs,
to widen, not even change
Oh.
the sign, just to widen the shoulder. Because what happens is it narrows, and as it narrows, people are right on your tail. If they widen the road a little bit, it gives us more of a safety valve for exiting and then entering into Westside Drive. So they had that opportunity. I took the time to ask the person in charge of the paving at the time. I said, hey, could you pave a little bit on the shoulder? And they said, yeah, we'll do it. And they didn't do it. And I'm sure they have their rules and reasons for doing it, but it was a simple fix, little tar they could have put on there, and it could have been a safer entrance for all of us as a result of that. So thanks.
If you wouldn't mind giving your name.
Bob Montagna,
Thank you.
her husband.
Okay, then I think we will proceed with that. Thank you. Thank you. And Art and your group, thank you for an amazing amount of detail and study.
We can bring more.
No, that's okay. I appreciate it.
Of truckloads of supporting data.
Well, send
Thank
it
you
to
so much
Concord.
for your time.
Send it to
Yeah,
Concord.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any general public comments at this point? Okay, old business, discuss the police station site selection status. So at this point in time, the board and selectmen are in discussion only now with the owner of the continuing property of the 3 so-called Bewley parcels on Newport and County roads. We will continue discussions and negotiations, seek an appraisal and so forth. In the near future, we'll begin an evaluation of the 3 lots to determine a recommended site actually for the future police station, And we'll certainly be looking for and welcoming input from the community as this process proceeds. Any questions, comments? Okay, moving on, repair of the town clock in the First Baptist Church steeple. Kim?
So I had a conversation with folks from the First Baptist Church. They did watch your meeting on Zoom or on YouTube, I guess it was posted. And they called to say, while they appreciate the town wants to fundraise, and they think that's a good idea, and probably the town could fundraise for the repairs, they wanted to know if you could, if you will be repairing the clock so that they can get the scheduled work down along with their work. They hope to do it in the spring. And so they'd like to know as close and, sooner or later, sooner rather than later, whether you do indeed want to repair the clock so that you can have it done when the scaffolding is up for their work.
So the last time that we had this matter before us, we discussed, as is the history with this, the potential for fundraising, sort of the friends of the town clock. I don't know where we are at this point relative to that recommendation, or how we want to proceed with Kim's suggestion relative to moving forward. Janet or Bill, do you have a comment to weigh in?
I guess we can brainstorm how we would go about fundraising, asking people to donate to this, but I think that we should tell the First Baptist Church that no matter what, we will have that. We will pay for somehow the clock repair. It is a landmark in town and it looks awful. So we need to do that.
So just to clarify, Bill, I know you're going to make a comment. We are only talking about part 4 of that estimate, correct? Which is the 8,675.
Right, that's just the part for the,
Okay,
for the
just
clock.
just to clarify.
Yep.
Bill, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I agree with Janet, and I think we should give that message to the church so they can go ahead with their contract. And then I think at a future meeting, we need to consider how we're going to go about doing some fundraising. It was very successful in 2006, and I don't see any reason why we won't be able to cover it. But in the case we can't, then I think we will be obligated to find money in the current budget. We're talking about the spring of 2023, so it'll be in the current expenditures.
So as such, I think that I would suggest at this point that we perhaps do an article in Municipal Matters and start searching for anyone who wishes to be a champion of the town clock and the restoration, and who would like to serve on a committee. I don't think that's something that the Board of Selectmen would manage. Okay, so can I have a motion then?
So I move that we approve the proposal from the First Baptist Church for repairing the church clock at a cost of $8,675. Thank you.
Can we add to that with the understanding that we will do fundraising or seek fundraisers?
With the understanding that we will seek fundraising to cover the entire amount.
Thank you. I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. New business, discuss data needed to review costs recovery model used to determine dispatching fees. Colin, I believe this. came
Right,
from
Colin,
Chief Cobb
Colin
or
sent an email
was-
to the chief, and he's looking for information on dispatching and costs, various ways, and I do have some. I'll put it up and everybody can.
Thank you, Chief.
So basically what we want to do now is give the chief an idea as to exactly what kind of reports Colin's looking for, and then she may or may not be able to say whether our system can produce it. Oops. Okay. So, and Colin, I guess he'll jump in. The first thing he wants to know is the call types by participating town. And by that, he means police, fire, EMS, ambulance, and other services, e.g. highway, et cetera.
I think I can probably start by answering this, is that it would probably be helpful to standardize the terms, because a call type to me means something different from what I think Colin is getting at. So correct me if I'm wrong. So when you say by call type, that's just grouping police calls, fire calls, EMS calls, ambulance calls.
Correct.
Okay, so call type to the police means something very different. So I think it would help to standardize those terms a little bit. And when we say call type, that to me means 911 hangups, domestic disturbance, accidents, wires down, that kind of thing. So it might be more helpful to consider it as a dispatch function as opposed to a call type. Because the call types are, and this is a little bit later in your questions, when you asked about what the town report incident counts are, those are our calls for service. So if you look at last year's town report, it says 911 hangups. In 2021, we had 37 of them. So it might be semantics in the town report, but the town report police department incident counts are call types. So we don't group them by just police calls, just fire calls, just ambulance calls, just highway calls, because there could be multiple different services attending any one call for service, which is an accident. You could have police, fire, EMS, even the highway department there if it need be. So by call type, I think that's an important distinction to make, is that we don't group them by just police calls, just fire calls.
Okay, so I
It's-
I didn't even know we're going to talk about this at the meeting until I saw the agenda. So I'm perplexed about that. I thought that this was going to be a subject of a, what do we call them? Tour meeting where we were going to go through the data. I'm more than happy to do it, but I just wanted to level set here. This is news to me, this conversation that we're having here tonight, and the detail that we're going to have it. Willing to have it. I don't know whether it's going to fit your 20-minute agenda item, Nancy. But you know, this is the conversation I'm trying to
Well, we
get
don't
to.
have to complete the discussion. We can
Okay.
at least highlight it and, you know, get some of the facts out there and then proceed.
So what is the intention? What is the intended outcome of the conversation?
I put it on, Colin. I thought you and I agreed that you wanted to know while on the meeting on the 18th, which is tonight.
It was no,
Maybe
it was
maybe
at the
you was
meet.
assuming that.
I
Okay.
was assuming the meeting with the chief that was canceled today on the 18th.
Okay. I've always, remember when I was saying that these are conversations that the selectmen are going to have?
The
I've
select-
always been thinking that these dispatching questions were going to be addressed with the selectmen. So that's my fault then if you thought it was.
No, it's a
the-
misunderstanding. It's
Okay.
fine. I mean,
But-
my impression was that the selectmen, rightfully so, would be responsible for identifying the cost recovery model. What I'm trying to get underneath is the variables that go through the dispatch center that drive that cost of the dispatch center. I don't know whether the selectmen want to get into that kind of detail. We
Right.
certainly can
Well-
over a set of meetings, but
Right. And again, since they are going to be involved in that, the
Yeah,
setting of
yeah.
rates, then at least setting the groundwork for exactly. This is only to clarify what report you want so that the chief
Yeah.
will be able to say yes or no, because
Yeah.
tonight, that's all we were going to do, not getting any details,
that's
just
fine.
can
Yeah,
these reports be done or
yeah,
not?
okay,
That's it.
okay, that's fine. So Chief, I'm sorry, when you say call type, sorry.
So
So when you talk about the annual report listing of data,
mhm.
in that report, there could be that could have resulted in the dispatch of any one of or all of the police, fire, EMS, and ambulance.
Right,
Okay.
right. So like an accident.
Yep.
I mean, if we had X amount of accidents, that doesn't mean it's just a police or
No,
just,
agreed.
yeah,
Yep,
so
yep.
that's what that means. So yes, I can provide that data on call types.
By
each
town?
Yes, by
Okay,
each
good.
participating
Okay.
town, yes. And
If you were to, I'm sorry, why don't we go through the data and then we'll go through
it,
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 okay?
it does require some work because I have to pull it and it would take a long time. I think if you want to know how many 911 hang up calls there are in New London, Sunapee, Newbury, Sutton, Wilmette, that's going to take a considerable amount of time to gather. It's a report we can run with our software.
So if it could be run by
But-
the software, why would it take time?
Because some of the times we have to.
Do you have to write do you have to
delineate
write
the route.
do you have to write a report request in order to get that?
Oh,
run?
no. We can run that within
Okay.
our own, but
Okay.
it just takes some time to compile
Yeah,
that kind of
Yeah,
data.
yeah.
So,
But do you look at that data when you evaluate how to charge other towns and what the volumes are to
no, we charge by a 3-year average of
Yeah.
the amount of calls for service that a town,
total service?
yes,
which
all
includes
of
all
the
those.
calls for service for that
Right.
town. Yep.
So I don't know
But
whether,
the-
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sorry. The 3-year average, I think, is important
Yeah.
because it's not based on 1 year. Like we'll use one of the towns that uses our dispatching center. They have a very small amount of staff. And that person has been out for several months with shoulder surgery. So their calls for service for 2022 are going to be significantly less. So that's one of the reasons I think that the board decided many years ago, before I was here, to use a 3-year average, which I think is a fair representation.
Does the board appreciate, did the board see the emails so they understand the reasons for their questions?
Yep,
Okay.
they've seen them.
Okay, all right.
This, what I have on the screen is just the
Understood.
pinpoint things, not all.
Not
of
the
other
explanation as to why.
Right.
Okay, but as long as they've seen it, they understand the context. Okay.
I think you went through this one. So we all set with this one? Are we
I think
pretty clear on what we
so.
mean here? Okay.
So I'm sorry. So the consolidation or the combination of, if you go back one slide, please. If we understood, because I think the listener should understand the reasons for the questions. If we understood the volume by call type or dispatch function, the reason why I say that, I'm going to make it up because I don't know the data. If 90% of New London's calls in the dispatch were 526-2626, can I have a fire tonight? And 90% of Sunapee was 911. The cost allocation of the technology and the people for a 911 call is more complex than, yes, you can have a fire tonight. So trying to understand the call volume from each town and what generates that call volume can drive conversations around how we're doing call management. If a lot of our calls are 526-2626, can I have a fire tonight? It allows us to take a look at what investments are we making above and beyond that, and for what call volumes are we making those investments?
I think the important piece of that is that the point is that there's somebody else on the other end of the line to pick up the phone, no matter what it is.
I don't disagree with that. The point is that the cost allocation model for a simple call is different than the cost allocated model for
Sure,
a complex call.
We don't differentiate between simple versus complex. It's the total number of
Right.
calls for each community, but we can't predict that either. I don't know that one town won't have more structure fires than another town, which requires.
If you're using a
hours of
3-year average, you
dispatchers.
would just use the average. You're not predicting anything, right? If you had the 3-year average,
But I think what you're getting at is weighing calls. So let's
What-
weigh a structure fire
right,
versus more
right.
than,
that's another way of putting it. That's fair. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I think that's impossible to do because we could never predict that. And then I think that would be a slippery slope for towns to start leaving the New London Dispatch Center. If we're
Yeah,
going to
but
start
I'm not-
weighing calls.
We're not forecasting anything. We're using 3-year average of data that's already happened. So we're not looking at trying
But if we're going
to
to change our
guess.
pricing structure, then I think that would be a conversation we'd have to have with the other towns in
Oh,
terms
that's-
of weighing
that's-
calls. I'm not aware of another dispatch center that weighs calls like that.
I
They
don't know.
could exist, but I think that the way we do it seems to be a fair representation of the time that it takes for the dispatchers to enter in calls for service from other towns and the town of New London, which by and large uses the most.
So I like to run on data. I don't know whether that's a true statement until we see the data.
Okay.
I
What
mean,
type of data are you looking for? The
data,
number of
the
each
data
call?
request. And again, if 90% of the people in New London who dial 52626, if 90% of that dispatch functional use is, can I have a fire? I'm making it up.
Right. We don't have that data about.
So when,
Sometimes a phone call doesn't even require a call for service.
Yeah, I don't think there's any weighting that's done relative to each call.
Correct.
I think that's what you're getting at, Colin. I think that's far more detailed than the call volume has
And public
warranted that we
safety.
have.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we have to answer the calls and respond to them as they come in anyways. So we haven't gone through any kind of weighting process.
I know we haven't. I'm just wondering whether or not we have any insight into the,
Well, I think I would suggest at this point that perhaps, we put together the data that we have and
Yeah.
a reasonable time frame, recognizing there's an incredible amount of stuff going on
Yeah.
and the chief has been under a lot of pressure. And you review the data and we can have that
and
conversation.
that's why I asked for. it. And by the way, I have no misconception that this, whatever answers we get are going to influence the
Yeah, exactly.
2024.
And that's
fiscal
why
year.
I don't
All
want
right,
to
none whatsoever. Right.
belabor this at
All
this
right.
point.
Sure. So time of day of week distribution for each call type. I can produce a report on that. The busy season by call type, I think you're going to find something different for each community.
Hmm.
So like New London always seems to be pretty steady. We sometimes have a little bit of a lull when the college kids leave in May for a couple of, but it's always if the college kids aren't in town and the buzz isn't around town with more people in it, it's the summer season and the barn is in play. So we have a constant, kind of a consistent
Yeah.
season all the time. Sunapee, their busy season is certainly from June to September. So I think you'll find something different for each one, but some of the data might be able to support that, during these months, there are more calls for service. The average holding time for each, I think we kind of just talked about that, although, well, maybe not, but the holding time. So we don't have a mechanism to track how long a person is on hold for. We try not to put people on hold for any length of time or any longer than it needs to be. We don't have an auto attendant, when you call, you're the third person in line to get to a dispatcher. When people call the non-emergency number, the 2626 number, they have a real person on the other end of the phone. We don't have a computer with algorithms or anything focusing on what type of call they're having. The dispatchers are focused on public safety and helping people. So we don't have a holding time model.
So the reason
Nor do I have
why
a
I asked this question was the 2014 study went through some pretty comprehensive conversation about how a 911 PSAP interfaces with your dispatch center. And the 911 PSAP interface is a little bit more complicated than somebody else just dialing for an emergency, right? So the holding time is, again, it just, if we have a lot of 911, if history shows, again, because I don't have the data, that Sunapee offers a lot of 911 PSAP calls, the volume of your time spent for Sunapee would be more than if New London doesn't. So being able to understand the time value of a dispatch center's resources for one town or another could influence how you would charge a town.
Sure. Yep. I guess I would also offer that people call 911 for all kinds of reasons,
do.
which are not emergencies.
Agreed. Yeah.
So that's another way that the numbers would be a little bit skewed. But we don't have a way to measure holding time for a call. It's not like you call, at the major corporation and say you're going to be on hold for 38 minutes. And that's not
exactly.
And we were very careful when we got our new phone system within the last year. That was an option, is you can have an auto attendant. But I'm a firm believer that the community of New London and the communities that we dispatch for want to have a live person on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
We do have a business line auto attendant, but that's for non-emergency purposes. And so that's why we.
So
kept,
just to provide context, right? So the algorithm, the cost recovery study model has used I would say a fixed fee of $3,000 since 2014 in the model. It's had in there since 2014 or somewhere around there, $34,000 for capital reserves. And I don't think there's been any analysis as to what those numbers support and why they're there. And when you take a look at the communications dispatch center budget, it's gone up 35% over the last 5 years. And the revenue from the other towns has been flat. So all things being equal, one might think that the revenue from the alternative towns would be at the same growth rate as our costs. but something is not happening there. So as I was looking at the data, I was just trying to do some budget analysis to try to understand why that's the case.
You said a lot there, so there's a lot to unpack, so I'll take them one at a time.
Yep.
The first being that this being referred to as a cost recovery model,
Mhm.
that we don't generate revenue in public safety. We generate, people's livelihoods, and we generate safety, and we generate people's feeling of protection. So I get concerned a little bit, I have to say, when I hear about the dispatch center trying to come up with a cost recovery model.
Well, that's what it's
so we
called,
don't-
chief. And the revenue model I'm talking
Well,
about
it-
is the revenue
if I can
line
just-
item in the revenue budget. That's why I call it revenue.
Okay. So the other item that you had mentioned is the dispatch has risen 35% since the 2019 budget, which seemed high to me. So I took a look at it, and I think what you were perhaps looking at was the budget from last year. And when you get to the dispatch center, there is a number in there that says 35%, but that was actually the fiscal year 19 actual budget
That's
compared to the
correct.
fiscal 23 budget
Correct.
request.
That's correct.
So it's not a 35% increase. So I asked Lynn to run the numbers for me, which she did very timely, and I appreciate very much. And so if you compare apples to apples, the fiscal year actual budget to the fiscal year 19 budget to the fiscal year 23 budget, which is the requested amount, it's a 25.8% increase. And I think by and large, the biggest part of that increase is the 5th full-time dispatcher. The fiscal year 19 actual budget spent to the fiscal year 22 actual budget spent was a 10% increase. So the 35% wasn't, I think, entirely accurate, because it was comparing a fiscal year actual budget to a fiscal year budget request. And the variance from the budget years to budget years has varied from 3% to 7%, 9%. So it hasn't been a huge increase over the years. Certainly we'll see a bigger one this year, because we added a 5th full-time dispatcher that the budget committee supported, the board supported, and ultimately the town at voting. So the 35% I think just deserves a little bit of clarification there.
So let me respond to that. And I don't know if we want to do this. I mean, I'm a little bit disappointed that I don't have my budget data in front of me, because I don't know we're going to talk about this.
So
But for the purposes of this item, for budget analysis, it's important to look at the actuals in 2019 to the proposed 23 budget to deal with variance analysis. That's a 35% number. And if the big part of that increase has to do with adding a person, then one might think that the cost recovery model would have driven some of that cost of that one person to those other towns. The cost recovery model, as represented in the revenue budget line item for dispatch revenues from other towns, is flat. So it just begs the question, when you have a proposed budget at 35% greater than the actual 5 years ago, and the proposed cost recovery at flat, it begs a question. That's all. And all I'm trying to do is get underneath the data
Of why that
so we
wasn't
can
increased.
answer the questions. All right. That's all I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
All right. I'm not challenging whether or not we should be doing dispatch. I'm not challenging whether what you're doing the right or wrong thing.
Yep.
I'm just doing budget analysis.
Well, I appreciate that. And the $3,000
Yep,
user
yep.
fee, the flat fee that's
Yep.
charged to all towns, that was put into play many, many years ago. And I don't know the theory behind that, or necessarily if it should
I
be
don't know.
increased. I think
Yeah.
it probably could be looked at. But that's certainly a conversation that we would have to have with the towns. And again, I know you appreciate that nothing will happen for this budget year.
I do.
But in the next year, because there's some other things that might
Yep.
impact that.
So I think
Um,
at this point that the discussion, you don't have the items in front of you that you wanted to look at. I think we should suspend the conversation for now and save the discussion for the budget hearings that need to go on anyway, since we will be talking about dispatch and how the allocation is dispensed.
Sure.
So if that's okay. with you,
That's fine
Colin.
with me. Yeah. it's
Chief,
fine with
thank
me.
you for doing
Yeah.
what
I'd
you
like to
did.
say something.
I had so many more answers ready to go,
second.
Nancy.
And Chief, if you could, I mean, listen, distribute the answers in advance. I don't know what data Lynn gave you today. I don't have that data, so,
Okay.
it
so-
would be nice to have all that.
Absolutely.
And Bill wants to make a comment.
So Colin, I want to wear two different hats here for a minute. One
Okay.
hat is, I haven't dealt with this particular issue for several years because of my vacation from the select board. So when we get to talking about setting the rates and so on, I think we all want to sort of, dust it off. And even though what you're talking about won't impact the rates. I think we want to refresh our minds about how we do this and so on as a board of selectmen. I certainly do, because this is a topic that I don't have a great deal of recall on the last discussion that we had. Eventually, I'll have to ask him to dig out some of the minutes from 5 or 6 years ago. And then as a budget committee member, there are 3 of us here tonight from the budget committee, which is not a quorum of the budget committee, but technically speaking, no one member or 2 members or 3 members of the budget committee can ask to do something like this without a vote of the entire budget committee. That's part of the law. So I think at the next budget committee meeting, we ought to spend some time, and Joe, you can think about this also. This is one topic out of, I suspect, dozens where, as we go through the budget this year, we're going to have to decide as a budget committee, what things are we going to ask for more information on, and which ones are we not? Because the law is quite clear that we have the right as a budget committee to ask for information, but it also talks about what the limits are that we can ask. And it's very clear. I will read to you that one budget committee member has no authority to act alone, and one committee member cannot demand information if the committee has not decided by committee vote to request that information. So I don't think it's fair to the other 7 members of the budget committee that they haven't had an opportunity to talk about this. So on 2 levels, I want to talk about this with my colleagues from a point of view I was just discussing, and then with our other 7 colleagues on the budget committee, I'd like to sort of begin to understand what we're going to ask during this budget cycle of the town, and what things the committee thinks is worth doing. That you have your ideas, I have mine. I bet Joe has a couple of ideas. I've worked with him for a number of years, and I think we've just got to have a discussion of the entire budget committee about who's going to ask for what, and do we agree on that? Because we can't go out as sole players and do this. I can't, you can't, Joe can't.
Well, thank you for that, Bill. But if you recall at the budget committee meeting where we decided to go off and do the tours, it was agreed at the budget committee that folks can send questions of detail to the various department heads in advance of those tours. And that's what I did.
And so you were under the impression this was going to be part of the tour. that
Correct.
Was previously scheduled.
And that was
Or
agreed to
set-
by the budget committee. to
I'm
do
just
that.
cautioning us that we have to have a balance. So if the budget, whatever tour committee you were on, or I were on, or Joe were on, wants 10 tons of information, and the group that was on the library wants 15 tons of information, we're going to have to figure out how we get that down to 1 ton of information.
Well, I guess that's fair, but I think that most of the tours are done and those tonnages are not relevant.
I'm obviously
No,
exaggerating.
I
but-
understand, but my point is that I think the only area that has any concern might be this area. I don't know of any other tour
Okay, I'm
that has the
going to
area.
call,
Okay,
the-
I've
call
just- I've
this
made
at
my
this
point
point.
for
I
tonight.
think you both made your points, and Emily, again, I want to thank you for bringing the information you did, whatever happened relative to the misunderstanding for this evening. But obviously, it's a topic that will be focused on in the future. So thank you. Okay, appointment of future uses of Buker Building Committee.
Okay, since I sent out municipal matters, Janet Haynes contacted me, Jean Connolly, John Tilley contacted me directly.
And Bob Bowers and.
Bob
Rick.
Bowers mentioned it at a meeting, and I think the board asked Rip to
Yes,
attend. Yep.
okay, so is that closed then at this point?
No, you can accept, and maybe, did anybody contact you folks directly? These are the 3 I mentioned are the ones that contacted me directly.
No,
I've spoken with 2 of those people who also contacted me. And I think that Jean Conley and Janet Haynes and John Tilley and Rip Cross all provide a useful cross-section of the town. One person who was involved with the initial work with the Buker committee. And I think that's actually, I think the last meeting, Janet, you also said you wanted to be part of this. So I would see that maybe Janet and Rip and John, and so I get all the right names here, Janet and Jean might be a good start of 5 people for this I do not think, Bob, that you should be on it also for two reasons. One is Rip already has spoken up and said he would like to do this, and I don't think multiple people from the previous building committee should be on it. And second of all, I think you've particularly shown a strong desire in every meeting I've been in to not use the Buker building for something else. And the focus of this committee is supposed to be, if the Buker building were empty, what would we do with it? I don't know whether these people are in favor or not. Ask Mrs. Haynes, she's here.
So I do need to say that there was another member of the community who has submitted a volunteer interest form, who has a very interesting background with regards to putting together nonprofit corporations, public-private partnerships around the reuse of buildings and so forth. I think it's something that we should consider. This is an individual that has come forward with an interest and a background. So I'm not so sure that we can limit membership on this, or should limit membership on this.
I think there's a difference between membership and participation.
There always is.
The bigger the committee you have, the harder it is to even have a meeting because of quorums. Can you tell us who the other person is?
His name is Thomas Elliott,
Okay,
46 Mountain Road, New London.
be useful to talk to him, I think.
Yes, it would be.
Do you know him?
I do know him, and I think he would probably
Be a good
really
member.
good on
Okay,
this
great,
committee.
great.
His background is such that I think it would be helpful to have him. So I think if we have 6 people, that would be great.
Great.
Of course, all of the meetings will be announced. So if anyone wants to sit in, of course, they will be public. And I think we should just go ahead with the 6 people we've mentioned.
Nancy.
What?
Collins. Can say that.
Yes, Colin.
So for purposes of the 6 people, could we have the names again?
They are Jean Conley, Janet Haynes, Rip Cross, John Tilley, Tom Elliott, and Janet Kidder.
I think it's shameful that you don't include Bob in this. And let me finish, please. I think that it's, there's nobody in this town who has a better appreciation of the departmental demands going forward than he does. He might be, the fact that you're suggesting he shouldn't be a member of this committee because of his association with BFC, I think it's shameful.
Well, okay, I'm going to have to disagree with you there because Bob has stated repeatedly that he doesn't see any use for Buker whatsoever if the police and dispatch were to move out. And he has indicated that he would like to see it torn down and that if that were to happen. So I think right from the get-go, it would be better to have a group of people that might look at Buker and think of possibilities that would benefit the community. And I haven't felt when we've discussed Buker, the uses of Buker, that Bob has been interested in doing that.
So as a counter to that, whatever it's worth, I think that clearly the first report, I think that this Selectmen group at the time funded, what was the name of the report? Harriman actually recommended the tearing down of Buker. But I think that it wouldn't hurt to have at a committee level, people with different points of view and having that good debate about whether or not tearing it down, if that's Bob's only option. I know Bob well enough. I think that he's open-minded, that he would look at and listen to other options, but to have somebody who is a member of the committee that can provide insight that he has from all his background and can offer a counter point of view would make the committee more useful.
I get your point, Colin, but I think because we've had such a difficult time with some members of the Building and Facilities Committee and how they have treated our department heads and women in particular.
Okay,
I think it would be better
we
not
need
to
to
go there.
stop this conversation and continue down this road. Okay, Peter, if we could just calm down. I have to agree that I think that any time that we start eliminating, and I think it's shameful that we are having this conversation about an individual who is willing to volunteer their time. Now, if that's what you two would like to see happen, I guess that's the way it's going to go. But I think it's not a good sign that we are at this point. I agree that it's important to have varying opinions and ideas, and the fact that there does not seem to be any acceptance that people may change their minds or have a different viewpoint as a valid member of the citizenry is a sad statement at this point in time. So I would not vote to eliminate anyone who has volunteered for this committee. So be that as it may.
For the committee. All right, I move that we appoint Jean Conley, Rip Cross, Janet Haynes, John Tilley, Tom Elliott, and Janet Kidder to the site, to discuss future uses of the Buker building.
Second.
And the vote is? Sure, discussion, Janet.
Thank you. Is there no one else from the Building and Facilities Committee who might be willing to look at this issue without an avowed position on it?
Janet, I think that's not the point at this point in time, and we do have Rip that is a representative, but I think it's more a matter of it's important in any citizen body that we have differing opinions, and to hold someone subject to whatever, I think is unfortunate and disconcerting in my mind. So I think that's not even the point at this.
Okay, I'd like to
juncture.
just add one more thing. You know, whatever a committee comes up with and says, you know, we think these would be good uses for Buker, doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. And obviously there will be public hearings on any of the thoughts that come out of any committee. So there will be plenty of time to criticize when we finally get to that point where we have some people giving us some input.
So let's take the vote. Janet?
Yes.
Yes.
No. Okay, moving on. Discuss date and topic for next Citizens Committee, which as I understand it will be Saturday, September 10th. No, the first one is Labor Day weekend. So there was a decision by Maureen and others to not have it at that time. I think there's two parts to this. One is that Maureen has requested of the Board of Selectmen how we would like to proceed relative to the Citizen Committee and the relationship of the Board of Selectmen to the Citizen Committee. It has had many variations in the past. I think Maureen did an incredible job this past year coming up and soliciting topics from members of the committee and having people come for presentations. But we're sort of at a stalemate at this point. Although I do think it will be important to update the Citizens Committee on the housing situation, since they were very involved with that from the beginning. So ideas or suggestions from my colleagues?
Would we invite Steve Allenby and Mr. Winter to come?
Well, that would be the idea if we were to talk about
I
housing,
think
if
that-
they're available.
That seems to me to be timely and of great interest.
Mhm.
But would that be usurping the Housing Commission's?
Well, I
Maybe
think
maybe
that
could have Peter come too and
we would
bring us up to
include the
date?
Housing Commission as well. But I'm first like to talk about the larger issue of what could the relationship be of the Board of Selectmen to the Citizens Committee? Because they were asking for that at the last meeting. Is there any opinion on that?
I wish that we had a larger group of people, more representative of wide part of the town. We've got some wonderful camp followers who come every time. And I would wish that we could get other people. So my question would be, would we be better off having it at a different time or date maybe 7:30 Saturday morning isn't when people want to come. I think the purpose of it is useful, as we're talking about for the housing thing, but the number of people who show up is very small, and we get more useful debate here. And none of the people that are here now and looking usually come.
Although I think public.
Well, most of you do, yes, Peter, I said most, yeah.
Public-
You and your wife both come, yep.
Public engagement could certainly be a challenge if some people feel that their opinion is not valued. So we may need to look at ourselves relative to what we're asking people in terms of their recommendations, suggestions, ideas, and so forth. We have a very diverse community, and we need to recognize that in terms of people's opinions. Joe?
Nancy, you essentially took the words out of my mouth. I think it's really difficult when on one hand, you want to limit people being involved in certain groups. You've eliminated me. You've eliminated Bob. You've eliminated a vast number of people, Mr. Helm. And now you're asking, how do we get more people to come? I would caution you moving forward that many people don't want to come anymore. And tonight, what we saw happen to Mr. Bowers is the perfect example of why people do not want to come.
Okay, let's suspend the conversation on the role of the Board of Selectmen with the Citizens Committee, but let's plan on scheduling for September 10th. Be in touch with Maureen relative to, and Kim, if you could assist with seeing if the Steve, what is his name? His first name.
Steve Allenby and
Yes.
Andrew Winter.
Yeah, at least Steve might be available. Or Andrew, certainly. I mean, I don't want to eliminate anybody.
And do we want to spend the entire hour and a half, or do you want to review any of the committees you're on, or?
And Peter Nichols as well. I think we should do a status update. On
Remember
all
that
committees.
Maureen won't be there, so it'll be.
Right. Okay. Okay, moving right along. Appoint a selectman to sit on the Tri-Town Assessing Board. They meet quarterly, I understand.
Correct.
I will,
I don't mind doing that.
If you want to do it, I haven't had a turn, but go ahead.
Well,
No, I'm not looking for more to do, no. You're doing great. Is it okay with you, Nancy?
well, you've already had a turn, Karen, Janet. I'd
Well, you know,
like to have a turn
sure,
at it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So
Janet,
yes,
You're the new one? Okay.
yes. You. All right, set the selectmen's meeting schedule. We had originally historically been meeting on the 2nd and 4th. We switched that to the 1st and 3rd to be able to use this facility, but we will be going back to Whipple Hall in September. So if we are to meet on the 2nd and 4th, first of all, is that what you would like to do? That means the 8th and the 22nd.
That's what I've got written down.
Okay, then we go back to the 2nd and 4th Thursday of the months.
Can I ask a question? At the last meeting, Nancy, I raised the question of maybe also having a meeting on the 29th in order to fit all the budget meetings in. Kim, have you thought any more about the preparation for that?
Yep, I have asked the department heads to get their budgets into me in time for your first budget meeting.
On the 22nd?
Yep.
And how do you think we're going to need the 29th? We have to fit one more meeting in. Doing it every other week doesn't get us done.
Right. So whenever you feel like you can fit in the extra meeting.
The reason I proposed the 29th was because we have another one of those 3-week gaps because the way the month works, and I don't know what anybody else wants to do. And I just feel again, we need to tell the budget committee members because they've got calendars too.
That's fine with me.
29th.
Janet?
Yeah. fine.
So we would do the 22nd and the 29th of
September 8th, September 22nd, September 29th. Board of Selectmen.
Right, and then skip a week. And 13th of October,
13th and the 27th.
13th to 27th. Great. Fantastic. Thank you. And Kim, will you be sure that the whole budget committee gets that schedule?
Yeah, and I'll do up your schedule with the departments you'll be looking at each night.
Town administrator report, Kim?
Hey, probably everybody knows a couple of these. Water main break on Friday morning. We're all glad that it was that Friday and not the previous Friday of hospital days. That would have been kind of dicey. Town staff assisted in the repair of the water main. The police department shut down the roads, which Rob Thorpe tells me was a huge help in getting it repaired as quickly as possible. State Department of Health called the town office because there was nobody available in the water precinct. So they called us and I was able to get information from Jay Lyon and Lou Boda, who were on the scene. So we kind of had communication that way. So we're going to work with the water precinct. They have an emergency plan that they gave us. So we make sure that we have all phone numbers and things like that. So to get in touch with people when things like that happen. I mean, Will was the first one who alerted me because people came into his office. I think originally some people thought it was sewage, but I was happy it was not sewage and it was water. So
So does that mean DPW did the primary work on
they
making the
did,
repair?
they did quite a bit. The three
Okay.
water precinct people were in.
Oh,
the
okay,
whole
so
two-
they
yeah,
did, got it.
They're
okay,
there.
Got it.
So yeah, it was
Yeah,
a good
kudos
cooperative.
that they got it up and running as quickly as
They
did.
were, they got it back on before 3 o'clock, which was
Yes,
good for
they
the
did.
businesses who had to close. So that was excellent work. And Rob did call Rob Thorpe and thank the town for the assistance. We had our first sticker check at the transfer station. That was kind of fun. I don't know if anybody heard about that. We had about, I think, 60 cars maybe come through. We did it in the morning. Was Bob Harrington, Will Kidder, and myself. And we turned away maybe 15 people. Some came back after we directed them to go to the town office to get their stickers. We noticed.
Did they come back with a sticker or?
They did
just
come
came
back with a sticker. We had one person who showed us a picture of a sticker on a cell phone, which didn't even match the license plate he had. So there was some glitches there. We had two people that refused our instruction not to go to the hopper, not to go into the facility. Most of them did turn around when we told them they had to turn around. One was, I guess, fairly angry that we told him that he couldn't go in. And drop off his trash. I think that people were going to do several more of them throughout the year because it's important that people know they need the sticker on the windshield. Some people fumble in their glove compartment. They try and find it. They don't have it. It's on another car, whatever. We had one person who had his car was in repair in Massachusetts and it was going to be a longer term thing. He had a rental car. And we turned him away and he went and got a temporary pass. People came with their children, didn't have a pass. So everybody, with the exception of the two people who refused our instruction, were very happy. I think we did, even the ones we turned away. And we turned away people who are well-known in town and they were not unhappy. They realized they need the sticker. They turned around and they got it. So all in all, it was good. And we will do some more to make sure that people start to get into the habit of only people with stickers or temporary passes can be in there. A reminder, the first day of school is August 30th, so everybody be careful about buses and kids walking to school. Some happy news, the state of New Hampshire has given the town $113,296.22. That's part of the $30 million of sharing for road maintenance funds. So we get the additional amount. We already get over 100,000, so this is an additional 113,000 that will go into roads.
Right.
That's all I have.
Okay, committee meetings and reports. Janet?
Board met on August 9th. And then we had hotline adjustment and there was a hearing on the Hello Window Building. I don't know what else you call it. Used to be College Sports Shop. And they're adding 2 additional apartments to this building. There were supposed to be 3 originally, and now there will be 5. They are going to, there are no new poles added. We reviewed the the water system and they still have a catch basin, and which they indicated was even though the water flows on both sides of that building currently, they are directing it so it will go to the catch basin, and there should be decreased runoff because of this. We waived two parking spaces in order that they could add another ADU space. And one of the conditions was that the sewer would be reviewed by the engineer.
Janet, what was your comment relative to the poles?
They are not adding any utility poles. You had wondered about whether there'd be an additional utility. pole.
Where is the utility going to run from?
The existing poles, whatever's there.
On Main Street,
Yeah.
not from Barrett Road.
No, I guess, no, it's from Main Street. The poles from Main Street.
Okay. And is anyone concerned about the traffic that that's going to add coming in and out of there? I mean, I was at Village Sports just today, and coming in and out of there can be a little hairy when.
We didn't seem to think that that was going to be an issue because it doesn't seem like the building's overly used currently, and the people who will be living in the apartments probably won't be entering and exiting a great deal.
But what's the pattern for the traffic flow? Because there's not much room between them and.
The driveway is going to be between their building and Alley Oops, that building where the Village Sports was, and there will be no parking in
So
front.
the entrance and the exit.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it'll be
whereas
wide.
Village Sport now is in and out, so.
Yeah, it will be wide enough, and they have eliminated the parking on Main Street. But there'll be additional spaces on Main Street that will be parallel to the sidewalk that they're in.
Okay, any other committee meetings?
The Waste Committee had second meeting on August 11th and had Kim attended. We had a lively discussion about a small sample test for recycling compost and whether it would be a possible project to do just in the town or with commercial haulers from outside, and to be continued when Bob Harrington can join us. And one of the members is going up to Guilford, New Hampshire, where apparently there's a process for recycling styrofoam. So we've got a very engaged and active committee off and running.
Okay, approval of meeting minutes. Did we agree whether or not July 14th has been approved?
I think we said it was. I haven't
Okay,
checked.
July 28th then.
I haven't read them yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next regular selectmen's meeting will be September 8th. I think the other thing of note, because we have the litany of all the other meetings, is that the state primary is Tuesday, September 13th. And that will be here, correct? No, Whipple Hall.
Back to Whipple, right, Will? We're ready for it.
We're all set and off and running.
Off and running, yeah.
And Nancy, I believe our meetings are going to start being there starting on
Yes, in
September
September.
8th
Yes, I
also.
had
So
said
this
it
is our
for you
last
before.
hurrah here.
Okay, any other business to come before the board?
Things to sign.
Will we be able to get a copy or go online to find out what happened in this meeting tonight? All audio and stuff on the screen that will be up online on the town website.
Yes, all the meetings that we have been doing that are recording go up.
Everything that happened tonight is gonna be.
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole video.
Good.
Should, you're right.
Okay, so then we have approval of pay vouchers and permits, and that's it for the agenda.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just thanks.
No, we did that before. We're not going. Thanks, Emily.
You know what the person is shooting.
No idea.
I think it's unfortunate, but that we have this going on. And I'm glad actually it's up there because I'll tell you, the majority view is going to be who looks at it.
Oh, yeah, you know, and I'm thinking about all the people.
Yeah, okay. And I think it's really brassy.
I know, and I spent.
Okay.
Thanks for the coaching.
No worries.
So we're still video.
I'm making you wear a collar.
We have a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Will.
You have to start.
Yeah.
One in gray and one in yellow.